At my father's brightly lit birthday party at a luxurious club, my mother looked straight at me and coldly said, "You're not even family." I just smiled and said one short sentence, enough to make the crystal chandeliers seem to shake. That answer wasn't an immediate explosion, but it was the silent switch, activating a chain of events that would expose every secret, reverse power, and force everyone to redefine family. My name is Eden Marlowe. I am 32 years old, and I am a senior manager at Hearthline Analytics, a firm that prides itself on forecasting risk with cold mathematical precision. I am, by all professional measures, successful. I am also, by all personal measures, running late. Just a few minutes, maybe 7 or 8 at most. But in Vivian's world, punctuality is a scorecard. I felt the familiar dull throb of adrenaline behind my temples as I handed my valet ticket to the attendant. The Kestrel Pavilion was exactly the kind of place Vivian would choose for my father's birthday. It wasn't just expensive, it was performatively expensive. The building was a marvel of modern architecture in Denver, a glass box cantilevered over the city. As I walked through the oversized oak doors, the noise of the street was instantly vacuumed away, replaced by the sophisticated, muted sounds of wealth. A jazz trio played in the far corner, the saxophone a smoky, meandering thread woven through the polite clinking of heavy silverware and the murmur of conversation. The air smelled of expensive perfume and seared scallops. Tuxedoed staff moved with silent, ghostly efficiency, their faces masks of serene professionalism. I clutched the gift in my hand. It was in a simple box, wrapped in heavy cream-colored linen and tied with a leather cord. It felt substantial, a small point of gravity in my palm. I saw them across the room, gathered near the towering wall of glass that turned the Denver skyline into a silent, glittering tapestry. They were a portrait of a perfect family, backlit by the city lights. My father, Graham Whitaker, saw me first. His face lit up with a genuine, uncomplicated warmth that I rarely saw anymore. His smile was a relief, a small pocket of safety. He started to move toward me, his hand half raised, but he was anchored in place by the woman beside him. Vivian Whitaker, my stepmother, my father's wife, the woman who insisted I call her mom in public. She was draped in a dark emerald dress that shimmered like an oil slick. Her blonde hair was swept into a flawless, sculptural updo. And the jewelry, it wasn't just worn, it was wielded. A cascade of diamonds glittered at her throat, so bright and cold they looked like chips of ice. Heavy rings on both hands clicked softly against the stem of her champagne flute as she turned. Her eyes, a pale, assessing blue, raked over me from head to toe. The smile she offered was a thin, brittle thing, a painted-on gesture that didn't reach her eyes. It was a micro-expression I knew well. Judgment rendered. Sentence passed. Beside her, my half-brother, Cole Whitaker, leaned against a pillar. He had our father's height, but none of his warmth. Cole's smile was all teeth, a practiced, political gesture he'd perfected for his endless networking. He raised his glass of dark red wine to me in a mock toast, the picture of casual, confident superiority. He looked me over, his gaze lingering on the simple black dress I'd worn from the office. Too simple, his eyes said. And then there was Jax, the youngest, slouched in a plush armchair, his face illuminated by the blue light of his phone. He was already talking too loudly to a cousin, the words tumbling out in a torrent of self-congratulation. "Literally closed the deal in 10 minutes, he bragged, not even looking up as I approached. The guy had no idea what hit him. "Eden, darling, you made it." Vivian's voice cut through the jazz. It was smooth, but with an underlying sharpness, like a scalpel wrapped in silk. "Happy birthday, Dad." I moved past her and hugged my father. He squeezed me tightly. For just a second. "I'm so glad you're here, Edie," he whispered, his voice full of that familiar, apologetic warmth. He was always trying to smooth the edges Vivian created, always playing the peacemaker. Traffic from the tech center was brutal, I said, a partial truth. The real truth was that I had sat in my car in the parking garage for 10 minutes, bracing myself. Well, we're all here now, Vivian declared, clapping her hands together as if summoning a meeting to order. Let's sit. Dinner is waiting. A hostess, impossibly elegant, led us toward the private dining area. The long, polished mahogany table was set for perhaps 20 people. It was magnificent, adorned with towering floral centerpieces and a galaxy of flickering candles. I scanned the place cards, little tents of heavy cardstock with names written in perfect, swirling calligraphy. I found Cole, right next to Dad. I found Jax, next to Cole. I found Vivian, at the head of the table, a queen on her throne. I kept walking and walking, all the way to the other end. There, isolated at the far tip of the polished mahogany expanse, was a single-place setting, Eden Marlowe. It was a statement. I was not just separated from my father, I was marooned. There were at least 15 feet of polished wood, floral arrangements, and distant relatives between us. I could see him looking at me, his brow furrowed in confusion, but Vivian was already directing him to his seat, her hand firm on his arm. I sat down, the heavy damask napkins stiff in my lap. The emptiness of the chairs to my immediate left and right was a physical presence, a cold draft in the warm room. A waiter appeared at my elbow, his movements fluid. "Would you care for a drink, miss?" "Yes, I'll have a glass of the—" "She'll just have the house white." Vivian's voice rang out from the far end of the table. She hadn't even looked up from her menu. She'd just issued the command, dismissing me and the waiter in one breath. It was a power play, small and petty, designed to remind me of my place. The waiter froze, his polite smile faltering. He was caught, looking between the imperious woman at the head of the table and me. I took a slow breath. I did not raise my voice. I met the waiter's eyes with a small, calm smile. "Actually," I said, my voice clear and quiet, "I will have a bottle of the 1998 Cabernet, the one from the reserve list. Thank you." It was a ridiculously expensive wine. I didn't even particularly want it, but it was a necessary correction. From the far end of the table, I saw Vivian's posture stiffen. Her back, encased in the emerald sequins, became a rigid plank. She didn't look at me, but I had made my point. The waiter, sensing the shift in power, simply nodded. "An excellent choice, miss, right away." The dinner proceeded. The tension was a low hum beneath the polite chatter. Cole told a long, self-aggrandizing story about a client he'd dominated. Jax showed everyone a video on his phone that no one found funny. My father tried to catch my eye, to send me one of his warm, apologetic smiles, but he was trapped in conversation by Vivian's relatives. Then Vivian tapped her glass with a knife. "Presents," she announced, as if she were bestowing a great gift upon us all. Cole went first, of course. He stood and produced a large, flat box with a garish logo on it. "For the grill master," he boomed, sliding it over to Dad. Dad opened it. It was a set of barbecue tools, encased in hard, molded plastic, the kind of thing you buy at a gas station on the way to a party you forgot about. "Wonderful, Cole, just wonderful," Dad said, his voice practiced and polite. "Yeah, Dad, figured you could use an upgrade," Cole said, oblivious, sitting back down with a smug look. Jax was next. He didn't even stand. He just shoved his phone across the table. "Pulled some strings. Got us into that skybox. I had the best shot of us framed for you." My father squinted at the glowing screen. "Oh, that's great. Jax, really great." Jax snatched the phone back, already bored, and started scrolling again. "Eden," Vivian said, her voice bright and false. "Your turn." All eyes turned to me, all the way down the table. I picked up the linen-wrapped box. I didn't stand. I waited for a waiter to approach, and I asked him to take it to my father. The act of refusal, of not walking the length of the table like a supplicant, was another small defiance. The waiter placed the box in front of my father. The table was quiet. The only sound the distant, mournful saxophone. Dad looked at the simple, elegant wrapping. He carefully untied the leather cord and folded back the linen. Inside was an antique velvet box. He lifted the lid. He just stared. Inside, resting on faded blue silk, was the watch, an Orpheus Collector's Edition, 1952, his birth year. It wasn't flashy. It was brushed steel, with a clean, simple dial and a worn leather strap. It was the exact watch he had pointed out in an antique magazine 6 months ago, saying, "Now that is craftsmanship." My father's eyes filled with tears. He couldn't speak. He lifted it from the box, his hand trembling slightly. "Eden," he choked out. This is it. This is the one." He looked up at me, his gaze cutting through the 15 feet of mahogany and flowers, and his eyes were full of a raw, unguarded love I hadn't seen in years. He was speechless. He had no words. Vivian, however, did. She let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a terrible, grating sound. "My goodness," she said, her voice dripping with saccharine poison. "When you don't have a family of your own, what else is there to spend money on but showing off?" The words landed in the center of the table and exploded. The jazz trio seemed to stop. The silence was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket. Cole smirked into his wineglass. Jax actually looked up from his phone, sensing the blood in the water. My father's face crumpled, the joy draining out of it, replaced by that familiar, helpless panic. I looked at Vivian. She was smiling at me, a look of pure, triumphant malice. She had taken my moment, my one true connection with my father, and twisted it into something ugly and pathetic. She had meant to wound me. She had meant to put me back in my orphan seat at the end of the table. The old Eden would have shrunk. She would have flushed red, looked down at her plate, and offered a brittle, "I'm sorry you feel that way." The old Eden would have let the wound bleed. But the woman sitting there, the woman who had just ordered a $1,000 bottle of wine she didn't want, was not the old Eden. I had spent 8 years forecasting risk for other people. I had finally started to forecast my own. I held her gaze. I did not flush. I did not look away. I let the silence stretch, letting everyone feel the weight of her cruelty. I smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a manager about to liquidate a failed asset. Then I spoke. My voice was calm, clear, and loud enough for the entire table to hear. "Well then, tonight," I said, leaning forward just slightly, "let's just let the paperwork speak for itself." It wasn't a bomb. It was a chill, a sudden, sharp drop in the room's temperature. My father looked at me, his expression baffled. Cole's smirk vanished, replaced by a confused frown. Jax looked at Vivian, waiting for a cue. Vivian's smile froze. Her eyes narrowed into tiny blue slits. She didn't understand. Not yet. She had no idea what paperwork I was talking about, but she recognized the tone. It was a tone of finality. It was a sound she had never, ever heard from me before. It was the sound of a key turning in a very heavy lock. The silence that followed my words was not a comfortable one. It was heavy, pressurized, the kind of quiet that absorbs sound. Vivian's frozen smile was a rictus, the muscles around her mouth tight with a fury that had nowhere to go. She was confused, and Vivian hates being confused. I saw a flicker of genuine bewilderment in my father's eyes, his gaze bouncing between me and his wife, sensing a tectonic shift he couldn't name. Cole, always the opportunist, put his wineglass down, his earlier smugness replaced by a sharp, assessing look. He smelled a threat, even if he didn't know its shape. Jax just looked annoyed, his thumb resuming its rapid scrolling, already bored by a conflict he didn't understand. They didn't understand. To them, my words were nonsense, a bizarre, empty threat. But to me, the paperwork was everything. It was the invisible, crushing ledger I had been carrying for 8 long years. It was the weight in my bones, the reason I often woke up at 3 a.m. with a clenched jaw, the source of the dull, permanent ache behind my right eye. As I looked at their baffled, indignant faces, the timeline of my servitude scrolled behind my eyes, not as a messy flood of memories, but as a precise, itemized balance sheet. It started 8 years ago. I was 24, fresh out of my master's program, and 6 months into my first real job at Hearthline Analytics. I was so proud of my first 401k statement. It felt like proof that I was an adult, that I was building something. Then the first call came. It was a Tuesday. I remember the fluorescent lights of my cubicle. Vivian, hysterical, not just upset, but a performance of 5-alarm panic. "Eden, thank God, it's your father." My blood went cold. "What's wrong? Is he okay?" "His heart," she sobbed. "They're saying he needs an emergency procedure, an angioplasty, but the insurance, Eden, they're questioning the coverage. They won't do it. They won't operate unless we put down a deposit." "A deposit? How much?" Her voice broke. $20,000. They need $20,000 now. Eden, or they'll just monitor him. We don't have that liquid. You know how Graham's money is tied up? I didn't. I knew nothing about their finances, only that they lived beautifully. I looked at my computer screen, at the small retirement account I had just started. $20,000 was a meteor. It was more money than I had ever seen. "Eden, are you there? Please, it's his life." I did it. I logged into my retirement account. I liquidated almost everything I had, taking the brutal 10% early withdrawal penalty and bracing for the income tax hit. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely type. I wired the money to the account number she gave me. Debit, $20,000. Credit, father's life. A week later, I went to their house for dinner. My father opened the door, a beer in his hand, laughing about a football game. He looked tanned, healthy, and completely unstressed. "So glad you're here, Edie," he said, pulling me into a hug. "It was just a scare, a little indigestion. Vivian worries herself sick over nothing. You know how she is." I felt the room spin. "A scare? But the surgery? The deposit?" He frowned, genuinely confused. "What surgery?" "Oh, that... No. The doctor just wanted to run some tests. We had to pay our copay, of course. Ridiculous what they charge, but Vivian handled it." I looked at Vivian, who was setting the table. She met my eyes and gave me a bright, brittle smile. "We were just so worried. Darling, better safe than sorry, right?" I never saw that $20,000 again. It was never mentioned. It was the first entry in my silent ledger. Note: discrepancy in reporting. Motive: unknown. Loss: total. The pattern was established. I was the reliable one, the responsible one. 2 years later, it was the house. "Eden, it's a disaster," Vivian whispered into the phone, her voice conspiratorial, as if the walls were listening. I don't know how it happened. I must have misplaced the bill. The city, Eden, they're going to put a lien on the house. The property taxes, they're past due. $12,000. I was a manager by then. I had more income. I also had more sense, but not enough. The panic in her voice was the same, that carefully crafted, end-of-the-world tone. The thought of my father's home being threatened was unthinkable. "I'll handle it," I said. The words tasted like ash. I paid the Arapahoe County treasurer directly. The shame of seeing the final notice stamp on the digital bill felt like it was my own. Vivian's relief was a tangible thing, a gush of warm air over the phone. "You're a lifesaver, Eden, a true lifesaver. I just don't know what we would do without you." Her gratitude was the payment. It felt valuable at the time. A thank you from Vivian was a rare commodity. I categorized it under goodwill. Today, I'd value that asset at 0. Then came the brothers. Their needs weren't framed as crises, but as opportunities. Cole, perpetually overflowing with confidence and bad ideas, cornered me at Thanksgiving. "Eden, sis, you're the smart one. You get analytics. I've got this idea." It was a disruptive app for, I don't even remember. pet sitting for exotic birds, maybe. I just need seed money, 30,000, just to get the LLC filed. Get the coder started. I'll pay you back double in 6 months. This is a sure thing. He had our father's charm when he wanted something, but it was a thin, predatory version of it. I gave him the soft loan. He was family. You don't ask family for a business plan or a repayment schedule. The business dissolved in 6 months, the money vanishing into a black hole of development costs. A year later, he had another genius idea, a bespoke, artisanal jerky company. This one's even better. Eden. I've learned from my mistakes. He needed another 20,000. That company never even registered a business license. My loans weren't just soft. They were non-existent. They were gifts I was forced to give. Involuntary investments in his delusion. And Jax? Jax was a constant, low-level drain, a leaking faucet of entitlement. He flunked out of community college after 2 semesters. He's just finding himself. Eden, Vivian insisted, her voice firm, as if daring me to challenge her. He's creative. This coding boot camp is perfect for him. It's his future. It's the family's future. I paid for the books. I paid for the boot camp registration. I paid for the new, top-of-the-line laptop when he lost the old one at a party. He dropped out of the boot camp after 3 weeks. The laptop appeared on a resale site a month later. But the true cost wasn't in dollars. It wasn't the vacations I never took, the condo I hadn't bought, or the retirement account that was years behind schedule. The true cost was my life. His name was Noah Pierce. I loved him. He was quiet and kind and stable. He was a structural engineer, a man who understood that foundations had to be sound. He saw the cracks in my life before I did. We were supposed to go to Telluride for our 2-year anniversary. I had my bag packed, snow boots by the door. I had been looking forward to it for months. 4 days of quiet, of mountain air, of being with someone who asked me what I wanted for dinner. The phone rang. It was Vivian. Her voice was shredded. A crisis. Eden. A pipe burst in the basement. It's a flood. Your father is a wreck. He's trying to save your grandmother's old photos. We need you. We need you now. I looked at my packed bag. I looked at Noah, who was lacing up his hiking boots. He just watched me, his face sad. He already knew. I'm sorry, I told him. I have to go. It's an emergency. He didn't argue. He just sat down and slowly unlaced his boots. It's always an emergency, Eden, he said, his voice flat. It's been 2 years. It's always a crisis. When is it our turn? You don't understand, I said, the familiar, reflexive defense rising in my throat. It's my family. They need me. No, I think I do understand, he said, looking up at me, his eyes clear and full of a finality that terrified me. This isn't a family. It's a full-time, unpaid job, and you're the only employee. He left that night. He was right. I found out later, from my father, that the burst pipe was a leaky faucet under the guest bathroom sink. My father had fixed it himself with a wrench and a $2 washer. The crisis was just a lever, a tool to pull me back, to remind me where my loyalty belonged, to keep me from building any foundation that didn't have them at the center of it. Relationship with Noah. Pierce, liquidated, loss, total. For 8 years, every call from Vivian was a fire alarm. My cortisol would spike. My stomach would clench. I was a trained first responder. I would just react, grab the hose, and spray money and time and emotional energy until the fire was out. I see that now, looking at her furious, confused face from the other end of the table. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't a sister. I was an emergency fund. I was Plan B. I was the reliable, unmarried, childless, high-earning backstop for their entire chaotic, irresponsible, profligate life. I was the solution for everyone's problems, except my own. The irony is a bitter pill. At Hearthline Analytics, I am a star. My title is Senior Risk Analyst. I build predictive models that forecast financial instability. I can see a bad investment. a structural weakness, or a market downturn from 3/4 away. I advise multi-million-dollar clients on how to protect their assets from volatile conditions. Eden Marlowe sees the fault lines no one else does, my boss wrote on my last performance review. But I was blind at home. I was living inside the fault line. I was the single load-bearing wall for a house that was rotten to the studs. My professional expertise was useless against the emotional leverage of family. What changed? It wasn't one big thing. It was the small omissions, the parties I wasn't invited to, the vacations I only saw on social media, and then, 6 months ago, the proof. My cousin Ava, Vivian's niece, has always been kind. She's on the periphery, just like me. She sent me a screenshot. She felt guilty. "I thought you should see this," her text said. It was from a group chat. The Whitaker family. The real one. The one I wasn't in. The screenshot was from 3 days before my birthday. Vivian. "Eden's annual bonus clears on Friday. Cole, you should ask her about that new jerky venture this weekend. Be subtle." Cole. "On it. Jax, you need to mention that dental work. The cosmetic kind. Jax." "Okay. She'll pay. She always does." Vivian. "Graham, you just need to be appreciative and tell her how much we all count on her. It wasn't need. It wasn't chaos. It was a strategy. They were coordinating. They were scheduling my generosity. They were planning the ask. It wasn't a family. It was a syndicate. That was the day I stopped being a daughter and started being an analyst. It was a reflex. At first, I opened a new, encrypted folder in my personal cloud drive. I labeled it Project Whitaker. I saved the screenshot. Then I went back. I logged into my bank's website and went through 8 years of statements. I dug up the wire transfer for the emergency surgery to an account I now saw was in Vivian's name alone. I found the digital receipt from the county treasurer for the property taxes. I pulled every bank statement showing the transfers to Cole, the ones I had pathetically labeled loan. I found the credit card statements with the charges for Jax's boot camp and his laptop. I started a new spreadsheet. Date, amount, recipient, stated reason, cross-referenced fact. I saved every email from Vivian that dripped with pressure. "Your father is just so worried." Every text from Cole that promised repayment. "Right after this next round, sis." Every passive-aggressive sigh from Jax. "Must be nice to have a real job." 8 years of emergencies, 8 years of my life, quantified in black and white. This ledger, this paperwork, was what I was thinking of when I gave my father that watch. And it was what I was thinking of when Vivian, dripping in diamonds paid for with my retirement fund, spit her venom at me. I looked down the table. The ice in my water glass cracked, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. Vivian was composing herself, her face hardening. She was preparing her counterattack, the verbal assassination. She thought she had just insulted me. She thought she had won this small, public skirmish. She had no idea what she had just done. She hadn't just insulted me. She had provided the final, corroborating piece of data. She had provided the catalyst for a full, comprehensive audit, the habit of saving everything, that quiet, analytical instinct. It wasn't just a habit. It was the thing that was about to save my life. I did not go back to my seat. I left the half-full, $1,000 bottle of Cabernet on the table. I left my napkin, folded, by the plate. I stood up, and the simple act of pushing my chair back felt declarative, a final punctuation mark. I saw my father's confused, pained expression from the far end of the table, his mouth half open to call my name. I saw Vivian's eyes, narrowed to venomous slits, tracking my every move. She was preparing a new verbal assault, but I didn't give her the chance to launch it. I walked the length of that mahogany expanse, my heels clicking a sharp, steady rhythm on the polished marble floor. I didn't walk toward the exit. I walked past the jazz trio, past the glittering bar, to the manager's station at the very front of the pavilion. A tall man in a flawless tuxedo, the one who had overseen the seating chart, looked up as I approached. His name tag read Harrison. His smile was practiced, serene. "Ms. Marlowe, is everything to your satisfaction this evening?" "Everything is very clear," I said, my voice low and steady. I placed my black American Express card on the marble counter. "I would like to settle the check for the Whitaker party, but there is a change in the billing arrangement." Mr. Harrison's professional smile faltered, just for a second. "A change, ma'am? The reservation is under Mrs. Whitaker's account, to be billed in full at the end of the evening." "I understand," I said. "This is the new arrangement." I pushed the card forward. "You will split the check. I am paying for exactly 2 guests, myself, Eden Marlowe, and my father, Graham Whitaker. You will also charge my card for the full bottle of the 1998 Cabernet I ordered. The remainder of the party, every other guest, every other drink, every appetizer, will be itemized and billed directly to Mrs. Vivian Whitaker, personally." His eyes widened. This was not a financial request. It was a social detonation. He was a manager at the Kestrel Pavilion, a place built on discretion and the smooth, predictable flow of old money. I was asking him to hand a live grenade to the table's host. "Ma'am," he began, his voice dropping to a whisper, "that is highly irregular, the host of the party." I didn't let him finish. I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 crisp, new $100 bills. I laid them flat on the marble, next to my credit card. The green of the bills looked stark against the black stone. "I am aware this is an irregular request," I said, my voice as flat and final as the counter. "That is why this is for your discretion and your trouble. I am not asking you to negotiate. I am telling you what I am paying for. I need this processed immediately. I am leaving." The money changed the calculus. Mr. Harrison was a professional, and he was being paid to manage a situation. This was the language he understood. This was the language they all understood. He looked at the bills. He looked at my card. He looked at my face, my expression as hard and unyielding as the marble. He saw that I was not a flustered girl. I was a senior manager giving a directive. He gave a single, sharp nod. The hesitation was gone, replaced by pure transactional efficiency. "Of course, Ms. Marlowe, the system will process this new billing structure immediately. I will handle the presentation of the respective receipts myself." "Thank you," I said. I turned, walked past the waiting valets, and pushed open the heavy glass doors. The cold November air hit my face, and it felt like a baptism. It was the first clean breath I'd taken in hours. I handed my ticket to the attendant, the small white rectangle a ticket to my own life. My car pulled up, the engine a low, comforting hum. I got in and shut the door, plunging the cabin into a deep, insulated quiet. The silence was a relief, a sudden decompression from the pressurized, perfumed air of the pavilion. I sat there for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel, just breathing. My phone vibrated on the passenger seat. I looked down, a text notification from my cousin, Ava Morales. I opened it. It was a screenshot from that other group chat, the real family one, the one I wasn't in. My heart hammered against my ribs. A dull, heavy beat. The screenshot had been taken just minutes ago, right after I'd given my father the watch. The first message was from Cole. "Holy hell. Did you see that watch? She must have just gotten her bonus." An aunt I barely knew replied, "It was stunning. Graham was so moved." Then Cole again, the reply immediate, typed with sneering confidence. "Yeah, a total show-off move. Just washing the bonus money." I felt a cold, sharp nausea. Washing the bonus money, that's all it was to him. Not a gift, not an act of love for my father. It was a transaction, a vulgar display, an opportunity he had missed. Then, below his message, was one from Vivian. She hadn't used words. The outline had described it as calm, but it was worse. She had sent a single, passive-aggressive message that contained only 3 dots, a silent, digital command, a calm down, boys, that dripped with condescension, a let me handle her, that was more menacing than any shout. It was the text of a syndicate boss managing her unruly lieutenants. I stared at the screen, at the gray and blue bubbles that laid their strategy bare. They weren't just opportunists, they were predators, and I had been their most reliable source of food. Cole's words, Vivian's silent command. They were the last pieces of data I needed. The final validation. I put the phone down and started the car. I pulled out of the pavilion's circular drive, the city lights of Denver blurring into streaks of white and gold through my windshield. I did not turn on the music. I let the silence in the car do its work. It was no longer an empty void. It was a clean, sterile environment, a laboratory where I could finally think. The empty linen-wrapped box from the watch was on the passenger seat. It was the only other thing in the car. It was light, almost weightless, but the watch itself, the real gift, was with my father. That was the only thing that mattered. That one, single, genuine connection. The rest was just noise. The rest was just a liability to be managed. I drove the 20 minutes back to my apartment in Cherry Creek. The building was quiet, the lobby pristine. My apartment was dark, high above the street, and it felt like a sanctuary. It was the one place in the world that was mine, a space I had built and paid for with my own money, a space where no one could make demands. I dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, and as if on cue, my phone began to buzz, a call from Vivian Whitaker. I watched it vibrate on the granite countertop, the screen lighting up with her name. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it buzzed again. Vivian Whitaker. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again. Vivian Whitaker. I let it go again. A fourth time. This time, I hit the power button on the side, silencing the ringer. But the screen still lit up. I waited. A red bubble with the number 4 appeared on my voicemail icon. I opened my phone, went to the voicemail app, and pressed play. Aiden, what in God's name do you think you are doing? Her voice was not hysterical this time. It was a low, guttural roar, stripped of all its social polish. You call that manager back right now and you fix this. Right now. Do you hear me? The beep sounded. I saved the message. Project Whitaker. File. Voicemail 1. I played the next one. How dare you? How dare you walk out of your father's party and leave me with a bill? You humiliated me. You humiliated this family. After everything we have done for you. After all the years we've taken care of you. Saved. File. Voicemail 2. The third message was just choked static and fury. You are an ungrateful, selfish. You will not get away with this. I will not be treated this way. You. Saved. File. Voicemail 3. The fourth message was just heavy, furious breathing, and then a click. Saved. I stood in my quiet kitchen, the blue light of the phone illuminating my hand. For 8 years, that sound, that voice, had been a fire alarm. It had been a summons. It had been an obligation I was powerless to refuse. Tonight, it was just data. It was evidence. My finger hovered over her name in my contact list. I saw the options. Share contact, add to favorites, block this caller. I pressed block this caller. A confirmation screen appeared. Are you sure you want to block this caller? You will not receive phone calls, messages, or FaceTime calls from people on the block list. I pressed the red block contact button. And then, silence. A new kind of silence. It was not the absence of sound. It was the presence of control. It was the sound of a door being locked, a perimeter being secured. It was the sharp, clean, bracing taste of oxygen. I had finally, after 8 long years, cut off their supply line. I walked to my home office, a small room with a large desk and a view of the dark city. I sat down and opened my laptop. The screen flared to life. I ignored the work emails. I opened a new, secure browser window. I pulled up my email. I stared at the blank to field for a long moment. I typed in a name I hadn't used in 3 years. Margot. Haynes@HaynesLegal.com. Margot Haynes, a shark, a woman I had met at a Hearthline gala, a corporate lawyer who specialized in trust and estate litigation. I remembered her handshake. It was like gripping steel. I typed the subject line, Consultation, Elias Marlowe Trust. I began to type the message. Dear Margot, my name is Eden Marlowe. We met 3 years ago at the Denver Analytics Summit. I hope this email finds you well. I need to schedule a consultation with you at your earliest possible convenience. It is a sensitive family matter. I need to review a very old set of documents. Specifically, I need to see my maternal grandfather's will, the Elias Marlowe Trust. I suspect it's time. 2 days later, I was not at the Kestrel Pavilion. I was on the 42nd floor of a different building, in a different part of Denver. This tower was not made of warm, inviting glass and polished wood. It was built of cold steel, brushed aluminum, and tinted windows that reflected the harsh Colorado sunlight. This was the financial district. Margot Haynes's office was less a room and more a statement of intent. There were no soft edges. The carpet was a tight, industrial gray. The chairs were black leather and chrome, ergonomically correct and fundamentally uncomfortable. They were chairs designed for concluding business, not for lingering. The air smelled of ozone, strong coffee, and the faint, papery scent of laser printers. Margot herself was exactly as I remembered from that gala 3 years prior. Her silver hair was cut in a sharp, asymmetrical bob. She wore a tailored navy blue suit that was probably worth more than my first car. Her eyes were the color of a winter sky, and they did not just look at you, they performed a full diagnostic scan. Ms. Marlowe, Eden? She didn't smile. She gestured to one of the black leather chairs. Thank you for coming in. My assistant said it was urgent. It is, I said, sitting down. Thank you for seeing me so quickly. I don't waste time, Eden, neither do you. That's why I took the meeting. She motioned to her desk. It was an enormous expanse of dark, polished granite, completely empty except for a keyboard, a sleek monitor, and a single, thick, leather-bound binder. It was dark blue, with the words, The Elias Marlowe Trust, embossed in gold leaf on the spine. My firm holds the original, Margot said, placing her hand on the binder. Your grandfather, Elias, was a client of our founding partner for 30 years. He was meticulous. When you emailed me, I had this pulled from secure archival storage. My heart was doing a strange, slow trip hammer beat against my ribs. My maternal grandfather, Elias Marlowe, died when I was 12. He was my mother's father, a quiet man who smelled of pipe tobacco and old books. He was an engineer, a man who built dams. He believed in structural integrity above all else. After my mother died, he was my only link to that side of the family. And then he was gone, and I was left alone with the Whitakers. I don't know what's in it, I said, my voice sounding small in the vast, quiet room. I was told it was just a small education fund. Vivian said it was all taken care of. Margot's mouth tightened in a way that was almost a smile, but held no humor. Vivian Whitaker is not a signatory on this document. She has no administrative rights. She wouldn't have been permitted to see past the cover page. Elias was specific. She opened the binder. The pages were thick, heavy bond, and covered in dense, numbered paragraphs. Your grandfather was a very precise man, Margot said, her fingers tracing a line of text. He didn't just create a trust to pass on assets. He created a fortress to protect them, and to protect his bloodline. Specifically, you. She flipped past several sections. This is all standard. Asset allocation, disbursement schedules, tax provisions. But then, he had his lawyers add a few custom clauses. They are unique. I've never seen anything quite like them outside of a 19th century inheritance battle. She stopped at a page marked with a yellow tab. Here we are. Section 14, Beneficiary Conduct and Protections. She looked up at me, her gaze sharp. This is not a simple will. Eden, this is a map of conditional rules, and Elias left you in charge of the map. I don't understand, I said. Margot read from the page. her voice crisp and clear. Clause 14. Subsection B. In the event that a core beneficiary, that's you, Eden, as his only living direct descendant, is subject to documented financial abuse, coercion, or sustained emotional duress by any other named member of the extended beneficiary pool. Margot looked up, her eyes pinning me. Your father, Graham, is also a core beneficiary, but Vivian Whitaker, Cole Whitaker, and Jax Whitaker are named only as contingent beneficiaries. Their access to any part of this trust is entirely dependent on your father's, and as it turns out, on yours. My breath caught. What does it say? She continued reading. Said abuse, if proven through financial records, correspondence, or third-party testimony, grants the acting guardian of the trust the full and irrevocable right to immediately reallocate, restrict, or temporarily freeze all disbursements to the offending members in order to protect the integrity of the trust and the well-being of the core beneficiary. I stared at her. Freeze disbursements? It gets better, Margot said, a flicker of what looked like genuine professional enthusiasm in her eyes. Section 15. Contingency of guardianship. The primary guardian is your father, but, she tapped another line. In the event the primary guardian is compromised, incapacitated, or is found to be party, whether actively or passively, to the aforementioned abuse, guardianship defaults immediately to the designated protector. That, she said, tapping the page, is you, Eden. You're the backup. You're the fail-safe. So I'm the guardian and the beneficiary? Your grandfather was a brilliant engineer, Margot said. He didn't just build a dam, he built an emergency spillway, and he just handed you the controls. A wave of dizziness washed over me. But documented, proven, those are legal words. How? They are, Margot said, closing the binder. Her voice was all business again. This clause is a nuclear option, Eden. It has a very high activation threshold. We can't just walk into a bank and say, Vivian was mean to me. We need the paperwork. My hands had stopped shaking. I placed my laptop bag on my knees and unzipped it. I pulled out my laptop, opened it, and turned it around on Margot's desk. I had spent all of Sunday refining my spreadsheet. Project Whitaker. I opened the file. 8 years of my life, quantified. Column A, date. Column B, amount. Column C, recipient. Column D, stated reason for request. Column E, cross-referenced fact. Margot leaned forward. Her sharp eyes scanned the lines. I saw her intake of breath. She didn't say anything for a full minute. She just read. Entry. October 2017. $20,000. Vivian Whitaker. Emergency heart surgery deposit. Fact. No surgery occurred. Hospital visit was for indigestion. Entry. March 2019. $12,000. Arapahoe County Treasurer. Overdue property taxes. Fact. Taxes were not due for another 30 days. Crisis was fabricated. Entry. May 2020. $30,000. Cole Whitaker. Seed money for Exotic Bird B&B LLC. Fact. LLC filed. Never funded. Delinquent on first quarterly report. Entry. February 2021. $20,000. Cole Whitaker. Artisan Jerky Solutions. Fact. No business entity ever registered with the Secretary of State. Entry. September 2022. $4,000. Jax Whitaker. Coding bootcamp tuition. Fact. Dropped out week 3. Laptop sold on eBay. Margot finally leaned back, pushing her chair away from the desk. She looked at me, and this time, the smile was real. It was a thin, sharp, dangerous smile. My God, she whispered. You are Elias Marlowe's granddaughter. He would have loved this spreadsheet. She steepled her fingers. That line you used at the party, the one the Kestrel's manager told my assistant you used when you changed the billing. Let the paperwork speak for itself. You had this. You already knew. I knew it was my money, I said, my voice thick. I didn't know it was his. I didn't know he had already built the spillway. Well, he did, Margot said, her voice hardening. Now, let's vet these claims. We need to turn your spreadsheet into our evidence. She swiveled to her monitor. Let's start with the big one, the $20,000 surgery. You sent it to Vivian's personal account, not the hospital. Yes, she said insurance wouldn't cover the deposit and it had to be paid immediately. Of course she did. Margot's fingers flew across her keyboard. While we've been talking, I've had my paralegal on standby, with your father's full name and date of birth. We can subpoena the full medical and financial records from the hospital for that date range. More importantly, we can get the explanation of benefits from his insurance carrier. If he had a procedure, they paid. If they paid, there was no deposit needed. A $20,000 copay for an in-network procedure is fantasy. This smells like wire fraud. Eden, plain and simple. She looked at my spreadsheet again. Next, the property taxes, $12,000. You paid the county treasurer directly. Good. But the why matters. Vivian said they were past due. A lien was imminent. I navigated to another folder on my laptop. I already pulled the public records from the Arapahoe County portal. The payment was due March 1st. Vivian called me in a panic on February 15th, claiming the final notice had arrived and they were days from foreclosure. I paid it that day, but according to the county's own records, the final notice wasn't even scheduled to be mailed until March 5th. After the deadline, she wasn't late. She was early. Margot processed this. She manufactured the crisis. She created a temporary, artificial scarcity to force your hand. That's coercion. That fits the clause. And Cole? I said, my voice flat. His startups. My paralegal already ran his name, Margot said, glancing at her other monitor. He ran Cole Whitaker and those business names through the Colorado Secretary of State database. Exotic Bird BNB LLC was filed. Yes, it never filed its first quarterly report. Its status is listed as delinquent. As for Artisan Jerky Solutions, she scrolled. He never even filed the incorporation paperwork. He just took the money. This isn't just a bad brother. Eden, this is textbook financial abuse. He's using the family relationship as leverage to secure funds under false pretenses. She looked back at the blue binder. The clause needs one more thing: sustained emotional duress and behavior of public shaming to compel payment. I unlocked my phone. I have those too. I went to my saved folder. First, I showed her the screenshots from Ava. Cole's washing the bonus money text, Vivian's 3 dots, the silent command to her sons. A conspiracy, Margot said, her voice grim. Documented. In writing, they are coordinating their efforts to extract funds from you. And then, I said, there are the voicemails from the party, after I changed the billing and left. I pressed play. Vivian's voice, stripped of all its polish and poise, filled the sterile, silent office. How dare you? How dare you walk out of your father's party and leave me with a bill? You humiliated me. You humiliated this family. After everything we have done for you, you are an ungrateful, selfish. You will not get away with this. Margot's eyebrows shot up. Save those. Send me the raw audio files. That is not a family dispute. Eden, that is a direct threat. That is coercion. This is the entire case. Elias didn't just give you a shield. He gave you an arsenal. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. The sickness I had felt was gone, replaced by the familiar certainty of my job. This was just risk analysis. The risk had been identified. The data had been collected. Now it was time to mitigate. So, I said, what do? We activate it now? We freeze them? Margot held up one hand, a thoughtful, calculating look on her face. We're close. We are 99% of the way there. We have 8 years of documented history. We have the recent threats, but the trust language is specific. Sustained. They've been quiet since you blocked Vivian's number, correct? Completely, I said. Not a word? They're regrouping, Margot said. They're in shock. Their usual tactics, the rage calls from Vivian, the passive-aggressive guilt, they've failed, so they're going to try a new angle. They have to. They are addicts. Eden, and you have been their supply for 8 years. They will come at you again. It won't be Vivian this time. It will be Cole, trying to be the reasonable one, or Jax, trying to be pathetic, or most likely, they will try to use your father as a guilt lever. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine. If we want to activate Clause 14b with such indisputable force that they cannot possibly fight it, we need one more piece of evidence. We need to show them actively pressuring you, and you actively refusing based on the knowledge we now have. We need to document one final, failed attempt. After the events of the party, don't seek them out. Let them come to you. They will. And when they do... She smiled that thin, sharp, steel smile again. You'll be ready. I left Margot's office with the blue binder in my briefcase. It felt heavier than it looked, not just with paper, but with the weight of 8 years of unacknowledged truth. Margot had given me the legal framework. She had shown me the weapon my grandfather had hidden in the walls of his estate, but holding a weapon and being willing to use it are two very different things. My hand was steady, but my stomach was in knots. The law was a shield. It was not armor for the emotional shrapnel Margot had just guaranteed was coming my way. My next appointment was not in a high-rise tower. It was in a quiet, converted Victorian house in a leafy neighborhood, with a worn porch swing and overgrown ivy. The brass plaque on the door was small. Dr. Lark Donovan, Ph.D. Her office was the complete antithesis of Margot's, where Margot's world was chrome, steel, and ozone. Dr. Donovan's was soft lighting, worn Persian rugs, overstuffed armchairs, and the scent of brewing tea. Dr. Donovan herself was a woman in her 60s, small and sharp, with eyes that were simultaneously kind and utterly discerning. They were eyes that missed nothing. I sat in the armchair. It felt like an admission of defeat. Eden Marlowe, the ultimate problem solver, the senior risk analyst, had a problem I could not model my way out of. I told her everything: the party, the watch, Vivian's venom, the late-night voicemails, the 8 years of payments. I even told her about the spreadsheet. When I finished, the silence in the room was thick. Dr. Donovan just nodded, letting my story settle. "Well," she said, her voice gentle but firm, like a doctor setting a bone. "You are a classic case, Eden, a textbook chronic rescuer. Your entire identity, your value within that family system, is predicated on your utility. You are the fire department. You are the emergency fund. The problem is, you are dealing with a family of arsonists. They set the fires precisely because they know you will come running, hose in hand." She leaned forward. "This isn't love, Eden. It's a transaction. You've been servicing an unquantified and unpayable emotional debt. They conditioned you to believe that you owe them your entire life, your stability, your future, in exchange for, what, raising you? That's what parents are supposed to do. You've been paying them back for a service that was never a loan." Her words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Chronic rescuer, arsonists. "Your spreadsheet is brilliant," she continued. "It's the first time you've ever audited the account, and you've discovered, in precise, analytical terms, that you have been grotesquely overpaying for years. You are not their daughter. You are their most reliable and most abused asset." She gave me homework. It sounded deceptively simple. "I want you to go home," she said, "and write down 5 of your core values. And here's the rule. Not one of them is allowed to be helpful, reliable, generous, supportive, or useful to others. They must be about you." I went home and sat at my desk, staring at a blank piece of paper. It was the hardest assignment I'd ever been given. My entire sense of self-worth was tied to being the one who could handle things. I wrote loyal. I scratched it out. I wrote problem solver. I scratched it out. It took me an hour. My hand was cramping. Finally, I had a list. 1. Integrity. 2. Clarity. 3. Independence. 4. Calm. 5. Craft. That last one surprised me. Craft. The idea of making something just for the sake of its creation, not to fix something that was broken. The idea felt revolutionary. The next day, I acted on it. There was a small pottery studio I walked past every day on my way home from the office. Cedar Hollow Pottery. I went in. The air was cool and damp, smelling of wet clay and minerals. I signed up for an 8-week wheel-throwing class, Tuesday nights, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. It felt profoundly selfish. It was a fixed block of time in my calendar that was non-negotiable, non-transferable, and served no one's purpose but my own. Vivian would have called it a frivolous waste of time and money. It was the first structural boundary I had ever built for myself. That night, sitting in my quiet apartment, I thought of Noah, the man I had lost to a burst pipe, the man who had seen the truth 2 years before I was willing to. It's always an emergency. Eden, his words had haunted me. My fingers, smudged with dry clay from my new notebook. Found my phone. I hadn't spoken to him since he'd walked out. I found his number. I typed, deleted, and typed again. Hey Noah, this is random, but I was thinking about something you said a long time ago. You were right. Thanks for the warning. It just took me a very long time to listen. I hit send before I could overanalyze it. I didn't expect a reply. It was an admission, a settling of my own internal ledger. My phone buzzed almost immediately. I'm glad you're listening. Eden, be safe. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 2 years. A small piece of the old debt, the one I owed to myself, felt like it had been paid. Now, I had to build my defenses. Margot was my legal defense. Dr. Donovan was my emotional one. I needed a technical and practical line of defense. First, I went to my work email. I set up a new filter. I created a rule that searched for any email not from my approved contact list. If the subject or body contained the words urgent, emergency, help, family, dead, desperate, or the names Vivian, Cole, or Jax, the rule was simple. Move to folder, Project Whitaker, triage, mark as read, skip inbox. I was taking my hand off the fire alarm. I would no longer be ambushed by a subject line engineered to spike my cortisol. I would review them on my time, as data, not as commands. Next, I needed allies. I called the Kestrel Pavilion. I asked for Harrison, the manager I'd spoken to. He was off, but I was transferred to the senior event director, Tess Roy. Her voice was pure efficiency. Tess Roy speaking. Ms. Roy, my name is Eden Marlowe. I was a guest at the Whitaker party last Saturday. I was the one who requested to split the check. There was a half-second of silence. I am aware of the incident, Ms. Marlowe. Mr. Harrison's report was very detailed. Good, I said. Then you're aware I am in a dispute with the host. Vivian Whitaker. I am calling to ask if you or Mr. Harrison would be willing to provide a formal written statement confirming my actions that night. Specifically, that I requested to pay only for my father and myself, that I paid that portion in full, and that I provided a $200 cash gratuity for the staff's discretion. I need to counter a false narrative that I tricked the staff and stuck her with the bill. Tess's voice, already crisp, turned to ice. Ms. Marlowe, Mrs. Whitaker made that exact accusation when the separate receipts were presented to her. She then refused to pay her portion and disputed the charge on the card she had on file. Our accounting department is already dealing with her. We do not appreciate being used as leverage in family disputes, and we despise chargebacks. You send your lawyer whatever he needs. We will sign it. Allie, Tess Roy, secured. The silence from the Whitaker side lasted 4 days. 4 quiet, clean, uninterrupted days. I went to work. I came home. I went to my first pottery class, sat at the wheel, and failed spectacularly to center the clay. It kept collapsing, and I kept laughing. It was wonderful. Then, on Friday afternoon, Margot's prediction came true. My phone rang. The number wasn't blocked. It was Dad. My stomach did the familiar sickening lurch, the fire alarm. I took a deep breath. Calm, integrity, independence, I answered.
Hi, Dad.
Edie, his voice was strained, tired, and full of that familiar tone of forced peacekeeping. Edie, you're not answering Vivian's calls. No, Dad, I'm not. Honey, I don't know what happened at the party. It's a mess. Vivian is beside herself. She's so upset. And the bill, Eden. She said you just walked out and left her with that entire bill? I paid for you, and I paid for me. Dad, I paid for the wine I ordered. That's all. It was her party. But it's just money. Eden, is it really worth all this? This fighting? She's your mother. She is my stepmother. Dad, I said, my voice quiet but unshakable. And this isn't about the money, it's about respect. I could hear Dr. Donovan's voice in my head. Hold the boundary. Do not jade. Justify, argue, defend, or explain. I just need you to call her. Edie, please, for me. Just smooth it over, whatever it is. Just apologize so we can go back to normal. There it was, the real ask. Go back to normal. Normal. Where I was the shock absorber for everyone's bad behavior. Normal. Where I paid for the privilege of being tolerated. I can't do that, Dad. There was a stunned silence. What do you mean? You can't. I'm asking you. Your father is asking you, please. I love you, Dad, I said, my voice thick, but my resolve solid. I am happy to talk to you about your health. I'm happy to talk about the Broncos. I'm happy to talk about anything else, but I will not discuss money or Vivian with you. That is my boundary. Boundary, the word hung in the air between us, alien and sharp. He had never heard it from me before. I have to go. Edie, the line clicked. He had hung up on me. The primary rescuer had refused the call, and the dispatcher didn't know what to do. My hands were shaking, but I had held the line. The failed attempt through my father triggered the next phase, the one Margot had warned me about, public shaming. My cousin Ava sent me the link first, with a simple, pained message. I'm so sorry. Eden, this is horrible. It was a public post on Vivian's Facebook page, her page. Normally a wasteland of blurry rose garden photos and charity luncheon announcements, now featured a long, winding, open letter. It breaks my heart to write this. It began, set against a soft focus photo of her and my father, as a mother. You give everything. You open your heart and your home. You raise children who aren't even your own blood, and you love them fiercely, but sometimes that love is not returned. We are facing a difficult private time, as our eldest daughter has chosen to turn her back on us, all because of money. She has used her financial success as a weapon to humiliate her father and me, abandoning us in our time of need. Please pray for our family. Pray for Eden's heart to soften. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive martyrdom. It was also, as Margot would say, evidence. I did not comment. I did not engage. I took a full-page, time-stamped screenshot. I saved it. Project Whitaker. File. Public Shaming 1. An hour later, it got worse. Cole, ever the opportunist, saw his mother's performance not as a humiliation, but as a business opening. A new link appeared, shared by one of his cronies, a GoFundMe campaign. The title? Help the Whitakers Survive a Cruel Sister. The photo was a blurry, concerned-looking selfie of Cole. The text was a spectacular torrent of lies. My amazing parents, Graham and Vivian, are being financially attacked by my cruel, wealthy sister. After she refused to help with my father's mounting medical bills, a complete fabrication, and publicly humiliated my mother at my dad's birthday party. She has cut us all off, leaving my parents in danger of losing their home, another fabrication. We are just a humble family asking for help to pay our bills while we weather this storm of betrayal. Please give what you can. God bless. It was so brazen, so comically false, I almost laughed. He had just handed Margot the final, undeniable proof of a coordinated, public campaign of financial and emotional coercion. I did not donate. I clicked the Report Campaign button. Reason for reporting: fraudulent claims. I wrote a brief, factual statement. The organizer of this fundraiser is misrepresenting the facts. There are no mounting medical bills, and the organizer is attempting to defraud donors based on a false family narrative. I submitted the report. Then I took a full, time-stamped screenshot of the entire GoFundMe page. I saved the URL. I saved Cole's text. I saved it all. Project Whitaker. File. Public Shaming 2 Fraud. I forwarded the links to Vivian's post and Cole's campaign to Margot. Her reply was immediate and terrifying in its simplicity. "We are ready. They just gave us the gun, the bullets, and the signed confession. Come in tomorrow at 9 a.m. I had my session with Dr. Donovan that evening. I told her about the call with my dad, the Facebook post, the GoFundMe page. I felt sick. "They're telling everyone I'm a monster," I whispered. Dr. Donovan just looked at me, her expression kind. "Are they? Or are they just telling everyone their story? You've spent your entire life in their narrative, playing the part of the rescuer. Now that you've refused the role, they've recast you as the villain. It's the only way their story still makes sense." "So what do I do?" I asked. "How do I fight back? Do I post my own side? Do I show them the spreadsheet?" "No," she said, leaning forward. "You don't need to win this argument with them. Eden, you don't have to prove to their audience that you're nice. You're trying to win in their stadium, by their rules. The only way to win is to leave the stadium." She smiled, a small, wise smile. "Your lawyer has the right idea. Margot is changing the playing field. She's moving the game from the messy, emotional battlefield of Facebook to a quiet, boring, legal boardroom where feelings are irrelevant and only facts matter. Your family has no idea how to play that game. You don't have to win the argument, Eden. You just have to change the playing field." Margot's prediction that they would regroup was accurate. Her prediction that they would come at me from a new angle was also accurate. What I had not anticipated was the sheer, clumsy desperation of the attack. It happened 3 days after my call with my father. I was in my office at Hearthline Analytics, deep in a risk model for a new client, when my desk phone chimed. It was not an outside line. It was Chloe, our front desk administrator. "Ms. Marlowe?" Chloe's voice was low, professional, but stressed. "I'm sorry to bother you, but there is a young man here, a Jax Whitaker. He's at the security turnstiles. He says it's a code-red family emergency and that he needs to see you right now." My blood ran cold. The lobby. He was here. He had breached the wall. This was my place of work. The one place I was Eden Marlowe. Senior manager. Not Eden Marlowe. Emergency fund. I took a slow, steadying breath. "Chloe, did he give you any specifics about the emergency?" He said your father is in the hospital and asking for you. He seems very agitated. Ma'am, he's raising his voice at the security guard." My first instinct, the old, ingrained, chronic rescuer instinct, was to run, to sprint to the elevator, to find out what was wrong with my father. But Dr. Donovan's voice was in my head. "Arsonists. They set the fires because they know you will come." And Margot's voice, "Let them come to you." "Chloe," I said, my voice all business, cold and clear. "My father is not in the hospital. Mr. Whitaker is not on my schedule. He is not permitted access to this floor. Please have security inform him that I am in a classified, time-sensitive meeting and cannot be disturbed. If he refuses to leave, they have my permission to escort him from the property." "Yes, Ms. Marlowe," Chloe said, her voice full of relief. She was happy to have a clear directive. "And Chloe, please document this. Time, name, stated reason for visit. Send it to me in an email." "Right away," she said. I did not go to the lobby. I did not look out the window. I gathered my laptop, walked out of my office, and went to the west staircase, the one that led to the third-floor breakout terrace. I worked from a windy patio table for the next hour, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my hands steady on the keyboard. I was not running away. I was strategically rerouting. I would not be ambushed. An hour later, the inevitable email landed in my inbox. My filter, the one designed to catch emergency and family, shunted it directly to the Project Whitaker folder. I opened it. The subject line was, "I can't believe you." The email, from Jax's garish personal account, was a masterpiece of emotional incoherence. "Eden, I came all the way downtown. I told you Dad was in the hospital, and you had armed guards throw me out? Throw me out? What is wrong with you? Are you even human? Vivian was right. You've gone crazy. You're boycotting your own family. Fine. Don't come to the hospital. When he's gone, don't you dare come to the funeral." I read the words, and instead of feeling grief or guilt, I felt a cold, hard clarity. It was another lie, another fabricated crisis, another attempt to trigger my panic response. I saved the email. I forwarded it to Margot with a single line. For the file, harassment at workplace, using fraudulent health claims, 9:05 a.m. The professional front was now under assault from two directions. With my mobile number blocked, Vivian had clearly done some research. At 2:15 that afternoon, my desk phone chimed again. It was Chloe. "Ms. Marlowe," she said, her voice even more stressed. I believe it's Mrs. Whitaker on line 2. It's a private number, but she was very insistent. She demanded I put her through." "It's fine. Chloe," I said. "You did the right thing. Please, just take a message, a detailed one. I'm heading into that meeting now." There was no meeting. I sat at my desk and stared at the blinking red light on my phone. 5 minutes later, an email from Chloe appeared. Subject: Call log, V. Whitaker. Message: Ms. Marlowe. Call received at 2:15 p.m. Caller identified herself as Vivian Whitaker. Caller was irate. Stated purpose of call was to demand you stop this nonsense. She said you need to call off your lawyers, unfreeze Cole's fundraiser, and pay the Kestrel bill you skipped out on. She said if you do not, she will be forced to call your CEO and tell him what kind of ungrateful, unstable person he has working for him. She also used several expletives I am not comfortable typing. Message ends. This was it, a direct threat to my employment. This was the final piece of the public shaming clause. I scanned the note. I saved it. I forwarded it to Margot. For the file: Coercion and direct threat to employment, 2:17 p.m. Margot's reply was instant. "We have them. Now, let's lock it down. It's time to set the trap for Cole. Offer him the meeting, public place, tomorrow." My fingers were ice cold as I unblocked Cole's number just long enough to send a single text. "I'm willing to talk. Just you and me, no one else. The Drip Cafe on Larimer, 10 a.m. tomorrow. If you're late, I'm leaving." His reply was immediate. "See you there. Glad you're finally seeing sense." The Drip Cafe was perfect. It was always busy, bright, and loud, with floor-to-ceiling windows. It was the last place anyone would want to make a scene. I arrived at 9:45 a.m. Margot was already there. She was settled in a dark corner booth, wearing a cream-colored blazer, her laptop open, a stack of legal-looking documents beside her. She looked every inch the high-powered executive finalizing a deal. She was our silent, invisible witness. I chose a small, exposed table in the center of the room. I ordered a black coffee and waited. Cole arrived at 10:03, all bluster and fake confidence, wearing a blazer I was fairly certain I had paid for. He slid into the chair opposite me, attempting a winning. "We're all adults here, smile." "Aiden, good to see you," he said, signaling the barista. "Latte? Whole milk?" "I'm not here for small talk. Cole," I said, "you're lying to people online about Dad's health to get money. You and Jax are harassing me at work. What do you want?" His smile faltered, replaced by a practiced, somber expression. He leaned in, his voice dropping. "Look, I know you're mad about the party, But this has gone too far. I'm worried. Eden, I'm really worried about Dad. Worried? I repeated, my voice flat. Yeah. This whole thing. It's killing him. He's not well. He's so stressed. He's barely sleeping. Cole shook his head, a poor imitation of genuine concern. He had to go to the doctor again, this morning. More tests. He won't tell us what's wrong, but it looks bad. Eden, he's asking for you, but he's scared of you. He's scared of what you'll say. To punctuate his performance, he slid his phone across the table. Screen up. It was a picture of my father. He was in his old, worn-out plaid recliner in the den, looking pale. A heavy blanket was pulled up to his chest. His eyes were tired, half closed, and he wasn't smiling. It was a well-chosen image, designed to bypass my logic and puncture my heart. I looked at the picture, the one Jax claimed was taken today, the one Cole was using as his trump card. This was this morning? I asked, my voice neutral. Yeah, right before he left for the doctor. Cole lied, his eyes full of false sincerity. I looked at the phone, then I looked at Cole. Unlock it, I said. What? Unlock the phone. I want to see the picture more clearly. He hesitated, suspicious, but he wanted this to work. He wanted the money. He punched in his code and slid it back. I picked it up. Cole thought I was going to zoom in on my father's face. I wasn't. I tapped the photo, saved it to a text message, and sent it to myself. Then I closed the photo, went to his camera roll, and found the original image. My analyst brain, the one that lives in data, took over. I swiped up. The file information appeared, bright and damning. Date taken, May 14th, 2025. Location, Whitaker Residence. 6 months ago. 6 months before the party. 6 months before any of this. It was the week he'd had a bad case of the flu. I turned the phone around so Cole could see the metadata. This picture is 6 months old. Cole? The blood drained from his face. What? No. That's a glitch. My phone's always screwing up. It's just an example. The point is, he's sick now. You're lying to me, I said, my voice quiet, but carrying in the bright cafe. You've been lying to everyone. I am not lying, he blustered, his voice getting louder. He is sick. This whole thing is his. You know what? You're right, I said, cutting him off. I pulled out my own phone. We should check on him. I'm worried. Too. Cole's eyes went wide. What are you doing? Don't call him. He's at the doctor. I told you. He should be home by now, right? I dialed my father's number. I pressed the speaker button. The phone rang once, twice. Edie! My father's voice boomed, cheerful and full of energy. There was wind in the background. What a surprise. Is everything okay? Cole was frozen. He looked like a statue, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. Hi, Dad, I said calmly. I'm okay. I'm just here at a cafe with Cole. He's really worried about you. He said you were terribly sick, that you had to go to the doctor this morning for a new round of tests. There was a pause on the line. The wind died down. Sick? My father said, his voice sharp with confusion. Me? No. I'm fit as a fiddle. Just finished the 17th hole. What tests? Cole? Are you there? What are you telling your sister? Cole's face went from pale to a deep, blotchy, furious red. I just meant... Cole, have you been telling people I'm sick? My father's voice was angry now. What in the hell is wrong with you? Cole snapped. He slammed both hands on the small table. The cups jumped, and my coffee spilled over the side. You set me up, he roared. The entire cafe went silent. The music, the chatter, the hiss of the espresso machine, it all vanished. Every eye in the place was on us. You set me up, you bitch, he screamed, his face contorted. You're trying to ruin us. You and your lawyers. You think you're so smart with your job. Cole, I said, my voice dangerously calm as I held my phone up. My father still on the line, listening. You are making a scene. I'll show you a scene. You're nothing. You're not even family. Vivian was right. You're not family. A barista and a man I assumed was the manager were now rushing over. Sir, the manager said, his hands up. Sir, I need you to lower your voice. Right now. You need to calm down. Fine, Cole yelled. He shoved the table hard, sending my spilled coffee cup clattering to the floor. Keep your money. You'll regret this. He stormed out of the cafe, slamming the door so hard the glass window rattled in its frame. The silence he left behind was absolute. I looked at the manager, whose jaw was tight with anger. I looked over at the corner booth. Margot was slowly closing her laptop, her face grimly satisfied. I ended the call with my father, who was just sputtering. What was that? I turned to the manager. I am so sorry, I said. My brother is clearly unwell. My name is Eden Marlowe. Here is my card. The manager looked at the mess, then at me. Ma'am, are you all right? I'm fine, I said, but just for my own records. For any legal issues, would it be possible for you to write down what you just saw? A brief incident report, just detailing his behavior and what he said? The manager looked at the door Cole had slammed. Ma'am, for a public disturbance and verbal assault like that? You bet I am. I'll have our corporate office send you a formal copy. Later that afternoon, I was back in the sterile, quiet world of Margot's office on the 42nd floor. The scanned incident report from the cafe was on her monitor, right next to the audio file of Vivian's threatening voicemail and the screenshots of Cole's fraudulent fundraiser. Margot looked up from the blue binder. That's it, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. It's done. We have the final, indisputable piece: coercion using fraudulent health claims, false evidence, verified by the metadata, and a public outburst, documented by a neutral third party. She tapped the binder. This is everything your grandfather's clause required. We have proven documented financial abuse, coercion, and sustained emotional duress. We have enough data to activate Clause 14B. She slid a document across the polished granite desk. It was a formal petition to the probate court. It requested an emergency hearing to enforce the terms of the Elias Marlowe Trust. It requested the immediate activation of the reallocation clause and the temporary transfer of full guardianship to me, Eden Marlowe, the designated protector, based on the mountain of evidence attached in the exhibits. It's time, Eden, Margot said. You just have to sign. I picked up the heavy pen. I looked at my name, printed neatly, waiting for my signature. I thought of my father, confused on the golf course. I thought of Noah, lacing his boots. I thought of Vivian, spitting her venom at me. I signed my name, Eden Marlowe. It felt like the first truly honest signature of my life. It's filed electronically, effective immediately, Margot said, taking the paper. The court will review, and the judge will issue the order, but that's not all. She smiled that thin, sharp, steel smile. While you were handling your brother, I had my forensics team finish their audit of the trust's full asset schedule. Your grandfather was, as I said, meticulous. What did they find? When your father married Vivian, Elias must have seen this all coming. He helped them buy that large house in Cherry Hills they live in. He co-signed the original loan. But he didn't just co-sign it. He did it through the trust. Over the years, the loan was restructured, but Elias never took the trust's name off it. In fact, he used the trust's holding in that property as secondary, quiet collateral for one of his own commercial bonds. I was lost. What does that mean, in English, Margot? Margot leaned forward, her eyes glittering with the thrill of the kill. It means, Eden, that the Marlowe Family Trust, the one you are about to take full legal control of, has a priority lien on that house. Vivian thinks she's living in her house. She's not. She's been living, all these years, in your asset. Margot's office was no longer a consultation room. It was a command center. The petition was filed. A digital request sent into the court's ether. but Margot was already working on the next 3 steps. "The judge will sign the temporary order by morning," she said, not looking up from her monitor. "The evidence is overwhelming, and the petition is ex parte, meaning they don't get to argue first. We presented an immediate and credible threat. The harassment at your workplace and the fraudulent fundraiser sealed it. By 9 a.m. tomorrow, your guardianship will be provisionally active." "So I'm in charge," I said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement I was testing, seeing how it felt. "You are," Margot said, finally swiveling in her chair. "Which means we now move from petition to execution. We need to formalize the terms. Your grandfather, Elias, already wrote the rule book for us. We just have to enforce it." She opened the heavy blue binder again, this time to a different section. "This is what I love about this document," she said, a dry appreciation in her voice. "Most trusts are all about who and how much. Elias's trust is all about why and how. He defined his terms. He knew exactly who he was dealing with, even 30 years ago." She pointed to a paragraph in the preamble of the trust, a section I'd glossed over. Section 2, Definition of Terms. "Here it is," Margot said. "This is our entire case. Elias Marlowe's definition of family member as it pertains to this trust." She read it aloud, and the words were not warm or emotional. They were the words of an engineer, a man who builds dams. "A family member, for the purposes of disbursement and governance, shall be defined not by blood relation alone, but by conduct. Specifically, a member is one who upholds the family's core principles of financial self-responsibility, mutual respect, and absolute transactional transparency. A member shall not engage in conduct that jeopardizes the financial or emotional well-being of another member for personal gain. A member, in short, is a net contributor to the family's integrity, not a net drain on its resources." I was speechless. Not a net drain on its resources. He had seen them. He had seen Vivian and Cole and Jax. Before they were even fully formed, he had seen the pattern, and he had, from decades in the past, drawn a line. He didn't just write a will. Eden, Margot said, her voice quiet. He wrote a corporate charter, a code of conduct, and then he tied all the money to it. She flipped back to Clause 14b, the one we had activated. If a member, Vivian, Cole, or Jax, is found to be in violation of that code, and you, the protector guardian, have proven it, their status is immediately suspended. Their rights are frozen. They are, for the purposes of this trust, no longer family members. They are debtors to the trust. Debtors to the trust. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. It was the most precise, cold, and accurate description I had ever heard. For 8 years, I had been servicing their debt, believing it was my own. Elias Marlowe had just corrected the ledger. "So," I said, my voice all business, all Hearthline analytics, "let's define the new operational parameters. What are my directives as guardian?" "Simple," Margot said. 1. You are to protect the assets of the trust. 2. You are to provide for the well-being of the core beneficiaries. That's you and your father. "My father," I said. The name was a knot in my stomach. "He was on the phone. He heard Cole. But he's passive. He's compromised, as the trust says." "He is," Margot agreed, "and the trust accounts for that. He did not directly participate in the financial abuse. He did not, to our knowledge, make the fraudulent calls or file the false fundraisers. He was used as a pawn, as emotional leverage. Therefore, he is not in violation. He is simply a beneficiary in need of protection. From them, and frankly, from himself. So I can, support him? You can, and you must. That is your duty as guardian. We will immediately set up a new, separate sub-account, funded by the trust and controlled only by you and my firm. From this account, we will pay for his legitimate expenses, his health insurance premiums, his actual medical copays. We can arrange for social care, a financial advisor who is not Vivian. whatever he needs to be safe and healthy. His access to the trust's benefits is now firewalled from hers. He is no longer her financial shield. The relief was a physical thing, a loosening in my chest I hadn't realized was there. I could protect him. I could actually protect him, not just react to their manufactured fires.
And them, I said, my voice hard. Vivian, Cole, Jax.
Debtors, Margot said. Their status as beneficiaries is frozen, effective immediately. All contingent allowances, all access, all lines of credit tied to the trust are severed, and they will remain severed until two conditions are met, two conditions that you will set, as per the rights of the guardian.
Which are?
Margot said, holding up a finger. Full and complete financial restitution. They must repay the trust. Not you. The trust. For every dollar they extracted from you under false pretenses, your spreadsheet is now their invoice. The total, by my calculation, is $94,000, not including interest, which we can and will calculate. My God, $94,000. Seeing it as a single number made me feel sick. And two, Margot continued, a full, public, and written apology, not to you, to the trust, and to the family's name, which they publicly damaged with their fraudulent campaigns. The apology must specifically retract the lies they told on Facebook and GoFundMe. They used public shaming to attack you. They must use a public statement to correct the record. And if they refuse? I asked. Then they remain frozen, permanently. The trust is clear. Financial self-responsibility. They can learn to live by it. And Margot smiled that thin, steel smile. There's the house. The lien, I whispered. The priority lien, she corrected. The property is in their names, yes, but it is an asset leveraged by the trust. With you as guardian, the trust can, at any time, call in the note, or more surgically, we can simply file the lien. It means they can't sell it. They can't refinance it. They can't pull a single dollar of equity out of it. It is, for all intents and purposes, a frozen asset, a beautiful 5-bedroom cage in Cherry Hills. This was the changing of the playing field Dr. Donovan had talked about. It wasn't an argument, it was a siege. So we draft the notification, I said. We draft the notification, Margot confirmed. We spent the next hour drafting the coldest, most precise, most terrifying document I had ever read. It was not an emotional letter. It was a legal notice of enforcement. It was addressed to Mrs. Vivian Whitaker, Mr. Cole Whitaker, and Mr. Jax Whitaker. It began, "This letter shall serve as formal notice, pursuant to the judicial order dated November 10, 2025, that the provisions of the Elias Marlowe Trust, the Trust, specifically Clause 14b, have been activated. It informed them that I, Eden Marlowe, had been installed as sole acting guardian and protector. It informed them that their status as contingent beneficiaries had been suspended indefinitely, pending review. It informed them that a new, protected sub-account had been established for the sole benefit of Graham Whitaker, and that all future communications regarding his welfare were to be directed to the offices of Haynes Legal. It informed them of the two conditions for the reinstatement of their own privileges: full restitution of all funds determined to have been extracted through fraudulent means, in the amount of $94,000, a formal, public retraction of all defamatory statements made on social media platforms, to be approved by this office prior to posting, and the final, beautiful, terrible paragraph. Furthermore, please be advised that a priority lien, held by the trust, has been filed against the property at 415 Cherry Hills Drive. All rights related to the sale, transfer, or leveraging of this property are hereby frozen. All rights reserved." "It's done," Margot said, attaching the final, signed, judicial order as an exhibit. "We will send this via secure, bonded courier to the house. It will require a signature. We will also send it via registered email to all three of them." "They're going to explode," I said, the thought a distant, analytical observation. "They are," Margot said, "and they will call a lawyer, A small, local family practice lawyer who is used to messy divorces, and he will be so far out of his league. The call came to Margot's office 48 hours later. I was there, sitting in the black leather chair, my pottery class notebook in my lap. Margot put the call on speakerphone.
Margot Haynes, she answered, her voice flat.
Yes, this is Barry Childs, a man's voice blustered, full of false, practiced bravado. I'm representing the Whitaker family, and I have to say, Ms. Haynes, in my 30 years of family law, I have never seen such a vicious, vindictive, and frankly, baseless attack.
Margot was silent, letting him talk.
This is an outrage. You have frozen my client's entire life based on the complaints of one bitter, estranged. Frankly, Ms. Haynes, your client isn't even family. She's a stepdaughter. She's not blood. She has no right, no standing, to do any of this. He had used the word, the trigger, the one Vivian lived by, family. I looked at Margot. Her expression was utterly, terrifyingly calm.
Mr. Childs, she said, her voice so cold it could have cut glass. Thank you for your call. I believe you are operating under a severe informational deficit, so let me be clear. She paused, and the silence on the line was deafening.
On your client's standing is irrelevant. My client's standing is that of protector-guardian, legally appointed by the court. 2. This is not a family law matter. This is a trust and estate litigation matter, and you are, as you've just proven, tragically out of your depth.
Now see here, he started to bluster.
No. You see here, Margot cut him off, her voice like a whip. You made the claim that my client, Eden Marlowe, is not even family. I am looking at the governing document, the Elias Marlowe Trust, and I am here to tell you that according to the legally binding definitions set forth by the testator, Elias Marlowe himself, your clients are the ones who no longer meet the definition of family. Their conduct has disqualified them. She let that sink in. The only sound was the faint, tinny breathing of Mr. Barry Childs.
My client, on the other hand, Margot continued,
is the only one who has upheld the trust's principles. She is not attacking your clients. She is, per her legal duty, protecting the trust from them. Your clients are not victims. They are debtors, and this office will be pursuing recovery of the $94,000 debt they owe. 90? 94. Childs was sputtering. That is all. Mr. Childs, all future correspondence will be in writing. Do not call this office again. Margot hung up. She terminated the call, plunging the room back into a serene, productive silence. I sat there, my notebook open to a blank page. The siege was complete. The borders were secure. The locks were engaged. The silence from the Whitakers and from social media was absolute. The Facebook post vanished. The GoFundMe was already gone. They had been loud, broadcasting their narrative to the world. Now they were trapped in a sudden, cold, legal silence. I remained quiet. I did not post. I did not gloat. I did not text my cousin Ava or anyone else. I just went back to work. I went to my pottery class. I let the paperwork, the cold, beautiful, unassailable paperwork, do all the talking. The game had, indeed, been changed, and the ball was, for the first time in my life, in my court. For a full week, there was nothing. The silence from the Whitaker house was no longer the quiet of regrouping. It was the pressurized, dead silence of a vacuum. The courier service confirmed the legal notice had been delivered and signed for by V. Whitaker. The read receipts on the emails confirmed they had been opened. The siege was not only in effect, the defendants were fully aware of the terms. I went to my pottery class. I turned a lopsided, terrible bowl, and I felt a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in my adult life. I was no longer waiting for the next fire alarm. I was just living. Then, the inevitable next move came. It wasn't a call from an unknown number. It wasn't an email. It was a text from a number I didn't have blocked.
my father. Eden, I know things are complicated, but Vivian wants to fix this. She is heartbroken. She has booked a private table at the Orchard House for tomorrow night, 8 p.m., just family. A real talk. Please, Edie, for me. My fingers hovered over the screen. A real talk. Heartbroken. Just family. It was the same language of emotional leverage, but softer, wrapped in my father's desperate plea for normalcy. They were shifting tactics. The public shaming had failed. The direct assault had failed. Now, they were attempting the reconciliation gambit. I texted Margot. The invitation has arrived. Dad's phone. The Orchard House. 8 p.m. Tomorrow. Just family. Margot's reply was instant. The Orchard House. Of course, expensive, but in a rustic charm way. She's trying to change the visual narrative from corporate greed to family healing. Accept, but you're not going alone. Tell your father you'll be there, but you're bringing a friend. I texted my father back. I will be there. Dad, I'm bringing a friend along. His reply was a simple, relieved. Thank you. The next night, I pulled up to the Orchard House. It was everything I expected. A sprawling, modern building designed to look like a 100-year-old farmhouse, complete with reclaimed wood, acres of warm, glowing Edison bulbs, and an open-air kitchen. It smelled of roasting rosemary and old money. Margot pulled up right behind me. She was not wearing her navy blue power suit. She was wearing a simple, elegant black dress, the same as mine. To any casual observer, we were two friends meeting for a nice dinner. We walked in together. Reservation for Whitaker, party of 5. Vivian had apparently booked, and a separate reservation, under Margot's name, for Haynes, party of 2. Yes, the hostess said. Mrs. Whitaker is in the private dining room, the Aspen room. My friend will be joining me for a drink first, I said smoothly. Her guest is running late. Can you seat us near the Aspen room, but with a view of the main floor? The hostess, sensing the confidence and the high-end reservation, was all accommodation. Of course, Ms. Haynes, we have a lovely two-top right by the fireplace. It's quite private, but overlooks the entrance to that wing. We were seated. Margot ordered a sparkling water. I ordered a black coffee. Our table was perfect. It was 40 feet from the Aspen room's closed wooden door, but we could see everyone who went in or out. We were on a separate check. We were a separate, sovereign entity. I'm going in, I said, after 10 minutes. I'll be right here, Margot said, not looking up from her phone. My audio recorder is on. Keep your phone in your pocket, not on the table, and don't mute it, just let it be. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked to the Aspen room. I pushed open the heavy, reclaimed wood door. The room was a stage set, a long, rustic table, a roaring fireplace, and at the table, sitting in a row, were Vivian, Cole, and Jax. They looked like a panel of judges, or perhaps a family posing for a very tense oil painting. Vivian had dressed the part of the grieving matriarch. She was in a soft, cashmere, cream-colored sweater set. Her makeup was minimal. The ice-chip diamonds were gone, replaced by a single, tasteful string of pearls. It was a masterful costume. Cole just looked sullen, staring into his water glass. Jax was vibrating, his leg bouncing under the table, his phone clutched in his hand. Eden, Vivian said, her voice a soft, wounded murmur. She stood and opened her arms for a hug. I did not move. I just stood in the doorway. Hello, Vivian. Her arms slowly dropped to her sides. The mask of loving mother slipped, just for a second, revealing the cold fury beneath. She recovered instantly, gesturing to the empty chair. Where is your friend? We were waiting. She's outside, I said, walking to the table and sitting down. Her guest is running late. She'll be fine. But this is a family dinner, Jax piped up, his voice whiny. I'm here, I said, my voice flat. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Vivian sighed, a long, theatrical, put-upon sound. She folded her hands on the table, the picture of pained reasonableness. Aiden, darling, she began. I know there has been a great deal of misunderstanding lately. I said nothing. I just watched her. I know, she continued, that I can be protective, passionate. I love this family. I love your father. And when I see him hurting, I react. And I'm sorry. She paused, waiting for me to absolve her. I didn't. I'm sorry, she said again, her voice a little tighter. If you felt hurt by anything that was said at the party, it was a stressful night. I was worried about Graham, and your gift, while lovely, it felt like a statement, and it hurt my feelings. It felt like you were trying to one-up your brothers. I just stared. I'm sorry if you felt hurt. The classic non-apology, blame-shifting, victim-playing. It was exactly what Dr. Donovan had predicted. And then, she plowed on, this terrible legal action. Eden, it's not you. This is that lawyer of yours. She's twisting you. She's twisting your grandfather's words. You've frozen everything. You've frozen us out. You've frozen your father's own home. The trust has filed a lien on an asset it holds as collateral, I said, my voice as cold and clear as Margot's. That's all. But it's our home, she cried, the performance ratcheting up. Eden, we need to fix this. Just call her off. Call off this attack, and we can go back to being a family. We can just talk like we are now. She smiled, a small, hopeful, desperate gesture. This was the offer. Capitulation in exchange for a return to the normal I had just spent 8 years escaping. Beside her, Cole, who had been simmering in resentful silence, finally cracked. Yeah, Eden, just fix it, he grumbled, not looking at me. Mom said just get you to lift the freeze, then we can all go home. The room went utterly still. Vivian's eyes snapped to Cole, her face a mask of incandescent rage. Cole, she hissed. But it was too late. Mom said just get you to lift the freeze. He had said the quiet part out loud. He had revealed the entire purpose of this sham dinner. This wasn't a reconciliation. It was a negotiation. And they had just shown their entire hand. I looked at Vivian. Her face was pale. The cream-colored cashmere suddenly looked like a cheap costume. I reached into the briefcase I'd set by my chair. I pulled out a single, stapled document. It was a printed copy of the relevant sections of the Elias Marlowe Trust. I placed it in the center of the table. You're right, Cole, I said. Let's fix it. I slid the document in front of Vivian, with a yellow highlighter. I had marked 2 sections. The first was Clause 14b. In the event that a core beneficiary is subject to documented financial abuse, coercion, or sustained emotional duress. The second was Section 2. Definition of terms. A family member is defined not by blood relation alone, but by conduct, financial self-responsibility, mutual respect, and absolute transactional transparency. Vivian stared at the highlighted words as if they were snakes. What is this? She stammered, all pretense of the wounded mother gone. That, I said, is the paperwork. That is the rule book. My grandfather, Elias Marlowe, wrote it. I am just enforcing it. Jax, who had been silent, suddenly lunged forward. He snatched his phone from his lap, held it over the document, and the screen flashed as he took a picture. Jax! Vivian shrieked. I'm sending this to Barry, he yelled. This is entrapment. Before I could say a word, the heavy wooden door to the Aspen room opened. Margot Haynes stood in the doorway. She was no longer a friend having a drink. She was an officer of the court. She walked into the room, her gaze sweeping over the table. Mr. Whitaker, she said, her voice clipping the air. Jax froze, his phone still in his hand. You have just taken a photograph of a private, privileged legal document in a private room without the consent of all parties, Margot stated, her voice dangerously quiet. That is a severe breach of privacy. She turned to the waiter, who had followed her in. his face pale with alarm.
"This is a private legal meeting," Margot said to the staff, "and this gentleman," she pointed to Jax, "just photographed our documents and is threatening to distribute them. Please confirm for your records that the restaurant does not condone this." "No, ma'am. Absolutely not," the manager, who was now at the door, said. "Sir, you cannot take pictures of other guests or their property. It is policy."
Jax's face crumpled. He looked like a child who had been caught. I was just... "Put the phone on the table, Jax," Margot commanded, "and delete the photograph, now." He did it. His hands were shaking. He fumbled with the screen, his face burning with humiliation, and deleted the image. Margot turned to Vivian. "This reconciliation dinner is over. You have, once again, proven that you are incapable of operating in good faith. You have confirmed, in front of a witness, that the sole purpose of this meeting was to subvert a legal court order." You can't be in here," Vivian shrieked, finding her voice. "This is a private family." "It stopped being a family matter the moment you committed wire fraud, Mrs. Whitaker," Margot said, her voice like ice. "It stopped being a family matter when your son filed a fraudulent GoFundMe. And it is certainly not a family matter when you attempt to trick your way out of a $94,000 debt." I stood up. I looked at Vivian, Cole, and Jax. They were trapped.
"Here is the final offer," I said, my voice echoing Margot's, but with the weight of 8 years behind it. "It's the same as the first one. You have 2 options." I slid another piece of paper onto the table. It wasn't the trust. It was my spreadsheet, the 8-year ledger. Option 1. You repay the $94,000 you took. You post a public, written apology retracting your lies. You do that, and the freeze is lifted. The lien is removed. We are done. I paused. Option 2. You don't, and the freeze remains. The lien remains. The debt collection process begins, and you can explain to your friends why you can no longer afford this house or this lifestyle. Vivian stared at the spreadsheet, at the cold, hard, itemized list of her own manipulations. She looked at me, and her face, stripped of all its masks, was pure, unadulterated hatred. She let out a short, sharp, ugly laugh. "Who do you think you are?" she whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "You're nothing. You're a secretary with a fancy title. You think you can come in here and dictate to us? Who do you think you are?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I had the trust. I had the law. I had the facts. "I am Eden Marlowe," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "I am the woman who paid for your life for 8 years, and as of last Tuesday, I am the legally appointed protector of the Elias Marlowe Trust. I am the person my grandfather appointed to protect my father, and to protect this family's legacy, from you." The door to the Aspen room opened again. This time, it wasn't Margot. It was my father. He looked flustered, his coat unbuttoned, his hair a mess. "I'm so sorry, everyone," he said, breathing hard. "The traffic was... What's going on? Vivian? Eden? What is this?" He looked at the table. He saw Vivian's face, contorted with rage. He saw Cole, sullen and defeated. He saw Jax, pale and shaking. He saw Margot, standing like a sentinel by the door. And then he saw the document in the center of the table. Vivian and I were silent. The whole room was silent. My father walked slowly to the table, his gaze fixed on the paper. He thought it was the trust. But it wasn't. It was my spreadsheet, the 8-year ledger of emergencies. He picked it up. He started to read. Date, October 2017. Amount, $20,000. Recipient, Vivian Whitaker. Reason, Dad's emergency heart surgery. Fact, no surgery occurred. I watched his face as he read the first line, and then the second, and then the third. I watched the color drain from his face. I watched his hand, the one holding the paper, begin to shake. He finally understood. My father stood in the center of the private dining room, his hand shaking so badly the paper, my spreadsheet, crackled in the silence. He was staring at the first line item, $20,000. Emergency heart surgery. Fact, no surgery occurred. His gaze, slow and heavy, lifted from the paper. He didn't look at me. He looked at his wife. Vivian. His voice was a dry rasp, unrecognizable. What is this? Emergency surgery? Graham, darling, don't be ridiculous, Vivian tried, her voice a brittle, high-pitched thing. The soft, cashmere-clad matriarch was gone, replaced by a cornered animal. It's a misunderstanding. She's twisting things. It's just her money. It was my heart, he said, his voice flat. He looked back at the spreadsheet. His eyes scanned down, line by line. I could see the moment he registered Cole's name, the exotic bird BNB. I saw his face crumple as he read the line for Artisan Jerky Solutions. He looked at Cole, and then at Jax, and then back at the paper. He was a man watching 8 years of his life, 8 years of his willful ignorance, be quantified in black and white. You told me Eden was helping with the taxes, he whispered, looking at Vivian again. You didn't say it was because you fabricated a deadline. Graham, this is not the place, Vivian hissed, finally dropping all pretense. You are embarrassing me. He looked lost. He looked, for the first time, utterly and completely broken. Margot stepped forward, her presence a sudden, cold authority in the overheated room. Mr. Whitaker, we are leaving. I suggest you keep that document. Review it. Cross-reference it with your own memory. We will be in touch. Margot put a hand on my arm, and we walked out of the Aspen room. We didn't look back. We left him there, standing in the middle of the room, holding the ledger of his wife's and son's betrayals. We left them trapped in the silence that followed. We didn't speak in the car. There was nothing to say. The confrontation was over. The hot war had ended. The next morning, the Cold War, the war of procedure and paper, resumed, and it was devastating. I was in Margot's office, my command center, as she now called it. She was on a speaker call, her expression grimly satisfied. I just got off the line with the senior counsel for Silverbrook Bank, Margot said, hanging up. The first domino just fell. They have reviewed the court order, the trust's original charter, and the priority lien Elias Marlowe filed against that mortgage note decades ago. They are, and I quote, in full compliance. What does that mean, in English? I asked, sipping my coffee. It means, Margot said, that the bank formally recognizes you as guardian of the trust, as the controlling party for that asset. The change of control is valid. The lien is ironclad. Vivian and Graham cannot sell. They cannot refinance, and they cannot get a home equity line of credit. Silverbrook Bank has officially frozen them out. Their largest single asset is no longer theirs to leverage. It is yours. It was a staggering thought. The very house where Vivian had plotted, where she had made those panicked emergency calls, was now a cage of her own making. What's next? I asked. The witnesses, Margot said. Her paralegal entered and handed her a stack of manila folders. The machinery of verification. We are building a wall of third-party facts so high they can't possibly climb over it. She opened the first folder. Affidavit of service. An independent, bonded notary public has signed a sworn statement that the legal notice was delivered and received by V. Whitaker at 9:02 a.m. on November 11th. They can never claim they weren't warned. She opened the second. Signed statement from Tess Roy, the event director at the Kestrel Pavilion. It confirms your testimony 100%. It details your request to pay for 2 guests. It confirms the $200 cash tip. And it explicitly states, Margot read from the paper, Mrs. Whitaker became verbally abusive toward the staff and refused to pay her portion of the bill, which we are still pursuing through a collections agency. So much for her humiliation story. She opened a third folder. "And this one," she said, a rare, thin smile on her face, "is my favorite, the incident report from the manager of the Drip Cafe. It details Mr. Cole Whitaker's unprovoked, aggressive, and threatening outburst. It quotes him screaming, 'You're not even family,' and..." She pulled out a small, shiny object, a USB drive. The manager, a very thorough young man, also included a copy of the internal security footage from Camera 3. He saved it to a file labeled Litigation. Cole didn't just give us evidence, he gave us a time-stamped, high-definition exhibit. This was the power Margot wielded. It wasn't the rage of a shouting match. It was the cold, quiet, crushing weight of facts. It was the slow, systematic closing of every door, every window, every possible exit. The final, inevitable call came that afternoon. It was Barry Childs, their family lawyer. Margot put him on speaker. Gone was the blustering, self-important fool from the first call. His voice was reedy, thin, and full of a desperate, contractual panic. "Ms. Haynes, Margot, look," he stammered. I've reviewed the documents, the ones my clients, acquired." "You mean the ones your client illegally photographed," Margot said, her voice like ice. "Yes, well," Childs hurried on, "and I've spoken with Silverbrook Bank. They are being extremely uncooperative, extremely, and my clients. Look, Mrs. Whitaker she's very distressed. This has all been a terrible, terrible misunderstanding." Margot and I just waited. The silence was a weapon. They want to make this right," he said, the words clearly tasting like acid. "There's no need to pursue this debt action, that number, the 94,000. It's speculative. What if we could come to an arrangement, a negotiation?" "I'm listening," Margot said. Perhaps a partial restoration of privileges for Mrs. Whitaker in exchange for, a détente, a mutual agreement to let this go. We can discuss a small repayment plan for a fraction of that amount, over time, if the lien is removed, immediately." It was the white flag, the official, desperate plea for a truce. They weren't fighting the facts anymore. They were just trying to negotiate the price of their surrender. I leaned forward. "Mr. Childs, this is Eden Marlowe. Thank you for your call. Please understand that this is not a negotiation. The $94,000 debt is not speculative. It is documented. It is fixed. The public apology is not optional. It is mandatory. Those are the terms for them." Now, Ms. Marlowe, that's unreasonable," he sputtered. "However," Margot cut in, her voice slicing through his, "my client is willing to discuss the welfare of her father, Mr. Graham Whitaker, as a separate matter from the outstanding debts of your other clients." I continued, picking up the script we had prepared. "Mr. Childs, please convey this to Vivian. I am offering to completely firewall my father from her, Cole, and Jax's financial liabilities. The Elias Marlowe Trust, under my guardianship, will cover 100% of his legitimate medical needs, his healthcare premiums, and his personal expenses. We will also provide him with an independent financial advisor and a new private bank account. His care is non-negotiable, but it will be administered by me, and his access to these funds is entirely contingent on his financial separation from them. That is the only arrangement on the table. Tell her to take it or leave it." There was a long, stunned silence on the line. Childs understood. I had just offered to save my father, but at the cost of Vivian's last shred of control over him. I will present this to my clients," he whispered, and hung up. The call ended. The unified front of the Whitaker family was legally and emotionally broken. The scrambles began. That night, my cousin Ava sent me a link. "You are not going to believe this," she wrote. Cole, in a move of staggering stupidity and desperation, he had tried to launch another GoFundMe. The title, Help my dad escape his abusive daughter." "He's panicking," I murmured. "He's just retrying the same failed tactic." Before I could even click the report button, the page refreshed. A new message appeared. "This campaign has been removed. The organizer has been suspended for violating our terms of service regarding repetitive fraudulent activity." The platform itself had blacklisted him. He had burned his own escape route. An hour later, my phone buzzed, a text from a number I had previously blocked, but had temporarily opened for any potential legal communication. It was Jack's.
"Hey, Eden, look, I'm sorry, okay?"
I stared at the message. "I'm sorry about the cafe, and about coming to your work. I was just... Cole and Mom. They get crazy. I didn't mean it. It was their idea. Can you just let me have my allowance back? I'm broke. This isn't fair to me. I didn't even do anything." It was the most Jack's message imaginable. An apology, a deflection of blame, and a demand for money, all in one pathetic whine. He was the weakest link, the first to break, trying to cut his own deal. I texted back, my thumbs moving with cold precision. "Your apology is not accepted. Jax, your allowance is frozen because you are a debtor to the trust. If you want to be considered for reinstatement, your apology must be public, just as your harassment was. You must post a public correction to your mother's and Cole's lies. Those are the terms. Do not contact me privately again." His immediate reply, "That's insane. You're ruining my life." I blocked his number again. The final, desperate scrambles had failed. I was in Margot's office for our end-of-week wrap-up. "So, they have two paths," Margot said, steepling her fingers. "Path A. They show up here next Friday. They sign the full confession. They sign the repayment agreement for the $94,000. They post the public apology that we draft. In return, the lien is lifted, and they can begin the process of reinstatement."
"And Path B?"
"They refuse," Margot said, her voice flat. "They don't show up, and on that day, we file the full civil suit for recovery of the debt. We proceed with foreclosure on the lien. The judge will force the sale of the house to satisfy the debt. There is no Path C. There is only capitulation or annihilation." She had scheduled the meeting, a signing, or a slaughter. The choice was theirs. That night, I came home to my quiet, dark apartment. I had just come from my pottery class. My hands were stiff, and they smelled of clay and earth. I had made a bowl that almost looked like a bowl. I set my keys in the ceramic dish, and my phone rang. The screen lit up. "Dad?" My breath caught. It had been days since the dinner. Days of silence. I answered, my throat tight. "Hi, Dad." There was a long pause on the line. Nothing but the sound of his breathing. It was ragged, unsteady. "Edie?" His voice, it wasn't the jovial, peacekeeping, let's smooth it over voice I had known my whole life. It wasn't the angry, confused voice from the golf course. It was small. It was broken. "I'm here, Dad." I read the paper," he said, his voice cracking. "The one you left. The list. All of it." Another ragged breath. "The surgery, Edie, the 20,000, and Cole's, his bird company, the taxes. I didn't know. I never knew." He was crying, a quiet, terrible, choked sound. "I need to see you. Edie," he whispered, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Just you. Not them. Not here. Alone. Can I come to your apartment, please?" The foundation of my world shifted. For 32 years, I had been summoned to him, to their house, to their chaos. This was the first time he had ever asked to come to me. He was not asking for a rescue. He was asking for sanctuary. "Yes, Dad," I said, my voice suddenly thick. "Yes, come over." My father did not come over that night. He didn't text to cancel. He just didn't show. The hours ticked by, and the silence in my apartment, which had once felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a waiting room,
The call had been a breakthrough, a crack in the wall of his denial. But the man who showed up at my door was not my father. It was a courier, with a lavish cream and gold invitation. Mrs. Vivian Whitaker cordially invites you to celebrate 40 years of marriage to Graham Whitaker. The venue, the Kestrel Pavilion. The date, the following Saturday. It was an act of breathtaking denial, a command performance. Vivian, with her primary asset frozen and a $94,000 debt hanging over her head, was throwing an anniversary party. She was not just regrouping, she was doubling down, using the performance of a happy, stable marriage as her last, desperate shield. My father's plea to see me alone had been overruled. He had been summoned back into her narrative. Margot's advice was simple. Go. She is handing you the perfect public stage to finalize this. The choice is hers. She could have signed the papers in my office on Friday. She chose this. The signing day, Path A or Path B, had been set for the Friday before the party. Margot's office had been silent. They hadn't shown. They had, in effect, chosen path annihilation. Vivian just didn't know the execution would be public. So I went. I walked back into the Kestrel Pavilion. It was transformed. If my father's birthday was an elegant dinner, this was a royal gala. The room was dripping in white orchids and gold fabric. A string quartet was playing. Not the smoky jazz of before. The air was thick with the most expensive perfumes. And the room was full. Vivian had called in every favor, every distant relative, every business acquaintance, to bear witness to her fabricated triumph. I did not wear a glittering gown. I wore a simple, tailored, dark navy blue dress. I wore no jewelry, save for a simple, modern, steel-cased watch on my left wrist, my own, a symbol of my own time, my own craft. I walked through the doors, and the murmur of conversation stopped. I was not an estranged daughter. I was a creditor, and every person in that room, thanks to the whispers of the past 2 weeks, knew it. I saw my father first. He was standing by the champagne tower, trapped in a tuxedo that looked too tight. He was pale, his eyes darting to the door. When he saw me, his expression was not relief. It was a mixture of deep, profound shame and a terrible, familiar panic. He looked like a hostage. And then I saw Vivian. She was a vision in glittering gold, a queen on her throne. The ice-chip diamonds were back, blazing at her throat, a defiant, "Up yours," to the lien on her house. She saw me. Her smile was a painted-on slash of red. She glided toward me, her champagne flute held like a weapon. She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell her expensive, suffocating perfume. The string quartet seemed to falter. "I didn't think you'd have the nerve to show your face," she whispered, her voice a low, venomous hiss, for my ears only. "You invited me," I said, my voice calm. "This is a party for family. Eden." And then she said it. The same line, the one that had started it all. She couldn't help herself. She said it with a small, cruel smile, her eyes glittering with hatred. "You're not even family." I didn't smile this time. I looked past her, at my father, who was watching us, frozen in place. I looked at the crowd, who were all pretending not to watch. Then I looked back at Vivian. "Then tonight, Vivian," I said, my voice clear and, for the first time, loud. "Let the paperwork speak for itself." It wasn't a threat, it was a cue. As if summoned by my words, a woman stepped forward into the center of the room. It was not a hostess, it was Tess Roy, the senior event director of the Kestrel Pavilion, dressed in her severe black suit. Beside her was a man I didn't know, in an equally severe suit, holding a leather folio. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tess Roy said, her voice amplified by the room's perfect acoustics. The string quartet stopped. "May I have your attention, please?" Vivian, who had been in the middle of her triumphant comeback, spun around. "What is this? I did not schedule any announcements." "Ma'am, please," Tess said, her voice firm. "We have been served with a legal notice, per the request of the court-appointed guardian of the Marlowe Family Trust,
who is present here tonight. We are required to make this official communication.
A visible, audible gasp went through the room. Vivian's face went from red to a ghostly, chalky white.
The Guardian, Tess continued, has invoked Clause 14B of the Trust. As the Kestrel Pavilion is a current debtor to Mrs. Whitaker, this, a beautiful legal stab I hadn't even known about. We are legally compelled to read this notice. The man beside Tess stepped forward. He was a legal courier. He opened the folio. This is a formal and public notice, he read, his voice a dry, emotionless monotone that cut through the perfumed air. Issued by the acting guardian of the Elias Marlowe Trust, as of Friday, November 14th, the Trust's offer of private settlement was refused by Mrs. Vivian Whitaker, Mr. Cole Whitaker, and Mr. Jax Whitaker. Vivian made a small, strangled sound. Therefore, the man continued, the following conditions are now in immediate and permanent effect. 1. The Trust has activated its priority lien on the property at 415 Cherry Hills Drive and will begin full foreclosure proceedings on Monday to satisfy the outstanding debt of $94,000.
$94,000, someone in the crowd whispered.
2, the man read, a civil suit for the recovery of that debt, plus damages, has been filed. 3, all contingent beneficiary status for Vivian, Cole, and Jax Whitaker is hereby permanently revoked due to documented, sustained financial abuse and public fraud. And 4, the man said, looking directly at my father, a protected, firewalled subaccount has been established for the sole and exclusive benefit of the core beneficiary, Mr. Graham Whitaker. These funds, covering all health and living expenses, are available to him immediately, upon his formal separation from the financial accounts of Mrs. Vivian Whitaker. The room was utterly, terribly silent. This was not a party, it was an execution. My father was standing, shaking, his hand on the champagne tower. He was staring at me, not with anger, not with betrayal, but with a dawning, terrifying clarity. He finally understood. This was his choice. This was the alone meeting he had asked for, but played out on the stage Vivian had built. Vivian, however, was not finished. She was broken, but she was still venomous. She turned on me, her face a mask of such pure, ugly rage that it was barely human. You! She shrieked, her voice cracking. You did this. You're not family. You were never family. You are nothing. Her scream echoed in the silent, orchid-filled room. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, not even pity. She was just a bad investment, a closed account. You're wrong, Vivian, I said, my voice quiet, but it carried in the silence. You just have the definition wrong. I turned my gaze from her. I looked at my father. I looked at the man who had stood by, paralyzed, for 8 years. The man who had been a passive accomplice. The man who, despite it all, I still loved. This was the last line, the final, closing entry in the ledger. In my grandfather's trust, I said, my voice clear and strong, my eyes locked on his. Family is not an extractor. Family is a protector. That's the definition Elias Marlowe wrote. That's the one I am enforcing. I took one step back, toward the exit, toward my new life. I held his gaze. This was it, the choice. You come with me, I said, my voice soft, but absolute. Or you stay with them. The choice is yours, Dad. But from tonight on, I will no longer have to prove I belong in this family. I will let how we treat each other define that word. Time stopped. The string quartet was silent. The crowd was breathless. Vivian was frozen, her mouth open in a silent scream. My father looked at me, his eyes full of 8 years of shame and 2 decades of love. He looked at Vivian, her face twisted in rage, a woman he no longer recognized. He looked at the crowd, their faces a sea of judgment. He let go of the champagne flute. It fell to the carpet with a dull, muffled thud.
He took one step, and then another. He walked away from his wife. He walked away from his life. He walked across the endless, polished marble floor of the Kestrel Pavilion, and he did not stop until he was standing in front of me. He didn't speak. He just reached out a trembling hand and placed it on my shoulder. A single tear rolled down his cheek and fell onto his tuxedo jacket. The light from the crystal chandeliers, the same ones that had seemed to shake the night I made my promise, caught the glint of metal on his wrist. It was the watch, the Orpheus, 1952. He had made his choice. The time, after all these years, was finally, truly his. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know your thoughts. So please comment below and tell me where you're listening from. Let's connect and share our reactions. Don't forget to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you really loved it, please support us by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.